Hello, this is the voice of admin, and it's Clancast number 5. Michelle is still with us. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you so much for answering all these questions so brilliantly.
Well, I haven't answered them yet, but...
Well, so far you have.
So far they're okay, but I'm sure I'm going to be stumped at some point.
We'll tell you if you fall down, but I don't think you will somehow. Let's kick off with Child of the Sea, who wants to know, do you like to listen to music when writing this COAD series?
No, I don't. I never listen to music when I'm writing. I think that's partly because the sort of music I like to listen to, I'm a traditionalist. I like, keyboard works, Beethoven, Schubert and things. I like to listen to them. And I think I'd find them very distracting if I was...
Well, Child of the Sea would like to know what sort of music you do like to listen to.
Oh, I see. Well, it's weird, but I haven't listened to that much music since I've been writing these books. I think that's partly because I've been so busy that, I don't have that much free time. And then when I do, I tend to read a book, somebody else's book. But when I do listen, it's Beethoven, the piano sonatas, it's Schubert, some of the string quartets. So very traditional classical music.
Kepata, or Kepata, not sure how to pronounce that, Kepata I think, says, I was wondering what you do when and if you get writer's block. What would give you the inspiration to continue writing? Because besides wanting to finish the book and delight all your fans, it's a privilege to be able to ask such an awesome author, awesome isn't nearly powerful enough, a question, and I can't wait to read Ghost Hunter.
Oh, thank you. Writer's block. I don't think I've ever had real writer's block, which is, as I understand it, is when you really can't write for days and days and days. So thank goodness so far I haven't had it. I've had the odd time when I've been stuck on a scene or something, and I'll tell you the way I get around it. And I now have a sign which I've put up. I've written it out on a postcard and put it up by my computer. It just says, "What's the feeling?" Now, that might not help very much to you, but just to explain, if there's a scene and I think, I've got to explain so much and there's all this is happening and that's happening, but okay, what actually is the feeling? Is Renn really annoyed about something? Is Wolf angry? Is Torak sad? Once I have the feeling behind it, that usually unblocks things.
Interesting. Harmony says, hello, my question is, what was the joke Torak told when his father was killed by the demon bear? It's mentioned throughout the series, but it never says what the joke was.
No, I know. It doesn't, does it? I'm afraid you're never going to find out.
Never going to find out.
No, that's just the odd thing. I don't like to state absolutely everything. Like Far's name, we're never going to find that out either. Nice try.
Yes, well, was a good try, Harmony. Torak the Hunter says, hi, Michelle, I love all your books. I even met you at Blue Water. And at that point, my life was complete.
Oh, I loved that Blue Water signing, actually, with that amazing backdrop that was all painted with Stone Age paintings and things. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I also have the pendant from Outcast, and my friend has the bracelet from Oathbreaker. We are your biggest fans. I just wanted to ask, will you write a series connected to the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness, like something about Torak's dad or Fin-Kedinn?
Well, at the moment, I haven't got any plans for that, because whenever I think of Torak's world, I think of Torak and Renn and Wolf. And I think it would be rather sad to be writing without them. So that's the way I think at the moment. I will be writing about something in the past, but it might not be this past.
Okay. Shark says, hello, Michelle. I just wanted to ask you, who was your inspiration? Not what, but who was your inspiration for Wolf?
Who was my inspiration for Wolf? Well, mostly it's just wolves I have known, but a little bit my younger sister, who's very curious and very enthusiastic about things. She either loves things or she hates things. So she's very emphatic.
That's nice, isn't it, to be immortalised like that?
Yeah,
nice to have a big sister like you to do that, actually. Well. Nice. 00 Ren 00 wants to know, she's writing from France, and I think she is French. So it'd be so wonderful to meet you. Are there going to be any book signings in France?
Well, I was in Paris, I think it was last year, and I also did a literary festival. So I hope so, but at the moment, no particular plans. You see, I have to be invited by Hachette. So, if they invite me, I would love to come. Yeah. Practice my French.
Yeah, absolutely. Young Feather says, one question I need an answer for is, do you ever get so involved in your writing that you think it's real?
Very occasionally, when I'm writing a scene, it completely takes its own life. It becomes alive. Very occasionally, I say, and that may sound odd to you but then when you're writing, you're kind of a split personality. Half the time I'm with Torak or Renn or Wolf, and the other half I'm thinking, now how do I keep the reader reading? Oh, that's going to surprise them, and they're going to be mystified by that. So quite a lot that often gets in the way. But yeah, very occasionally it happens, and then it sort of makes me cry or laugh or whatever. There were certain bits in Oathbreaker and certainly some in Ghost Hunter. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Medea says, have you thought about what you might be writing after you finish the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness? Will you stick to children's fiction or go back to adult?
Well, I've got two ideas that I've been playing with for the last year or so. I've just got notebooks that I've been jotting down ideas. One of them is for I say children, you're not really children, are you? You're sort of 10 to 14, 16, whatever. I've got an idea that I'm very keen on, but I'm a bit scared. I don't like talking about it. I just sort of let it develop in the darkness at the moment.
Yeah. Ilania says, hi Michelle, firstly, please let me say how wonderful your books are. My son, who's 14, and I have been reading them for the past few years. His birthday is in September, when your books usually come out.
That's my birthday's in September too.
And it's his first choice of gift. He's also sponsored a wolf in England by the name of Torak.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
For sponsoring Torak. He's a wonderful wolf.
Yeah. Looks like you've had a good influence on him. When you first submitted your initial manuscript for publishing, which parts did you submit? Did you send them a whole chapter or excerpts from various places in the book? And how did you make this difficult choice?
Well, with publishers, when you're submitting to publishers, it's always worth checking with the publishers or in the writer's handbook. This is for the UK, I'm giving you advice. To see how the publishers themselves like you to submit their work, your work, because they will say, first 2 chapters and a synopsis. And if that's what they want, then that's what you send them. So that's the first thing. You don't really make that choice. It's the publishers. Generally, it's the first 2 or 3 chapters and a synopsis. We're going back a bit when I was submitting like that, and that's what I did when I was trying to get published. When we came to something like Wolf Brother, I was already a published writer. I'd written for grown-ups, and so I didn't have to quite go through that route. I think we submitted the first 6 chapters and a synopsis for the very good reason that I hadn't written any more.
Nialdella, and let me say it again, Nialadella, says, hi Michelle, I absolutely love the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness. You have an incredible writing skill. I remember reading somewhere that you have been to South Africa, or your family originates from there. I am a proud South African and I embrace all the various cultures we have here. My question to you is, would you ever consider coming to South Africa and writing about the different cultures or tribes that we have here?
Well, I'm half South African, actually. My father was born in Bloemfontein. And I have quite a lot of family still in South Africa. So, I'd love to come back to South Africa, as and when I'm asked by the publishers, to do a tour, I'd love to come. In terms of setting something there or using some of the tribes, I have, to some extent, already used some of their beliefs. For example, the way Torak tracks animals in Wolf Brother and thereafter is partly based on the sun. They used to, of course, be called the Bushmen, and their attitude to hunting. So there's quite a lot of African mythology. The Tokolosh, for example, became the Tokoroth in the books. Whether I'd actually set something in South Africa, I'm not sure about. But never say never.
Yeah. Lexi, Torak. That's all one word.
Wow.
I think sometimes people choose their names just to make it really hard for me to pronounce them. Says, Michelle, I can't exactly express how much I love Chronicles of Ancient Darkness. You probably hear it a lot, but it is my favourite series of all time, capitals.
Well, I love hearing that. So.
Oh, yeah. I will never forget the day I found Wolf Brother. It only caught my eye because of the word wolf. I find Native American Indians and Inuits very, very interesting. I've also loved wolves for as long as I can remember. I hate Little Red Riding Hood.
So did I.
So when your book included both, I was ecstatic. Anyways, I live in Australia, and one of my life wishes is to meet you, get your autograph. So will you ever be visiting Australia anytime soon? It would be so awesome.
Well, I haven't got any plans for that. I did an Australian tour, a few years ago. But if if the publishers asked me back, I'd love to come because I had a great time. I wasn't only doing, signings and things. I was also going to some of your fabulous museums and learning all about the Aborigines. So, watch this space.
Okay.
If I do have a tour organised, details will be up on the
It'll be on the clan note, yeah. Mystic Girl says, as you develop the characters, do you find you develop yourself as both a writer and as a person? Are there any characters you would like to be more like?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I don't know whether I develop... I think the thing with characters is it gives you a chance to explore different aspects of yourself, not always nice ones. I mean, I made up the Soul Eaters, Where did all that come from, all that horrible stuff? So that's not a very nice aspect. I suppose what it does teach you is what things you are worried about and you're concerned about and interested in, because those are the things you write about. So there's quite a lot of death in the stories. And ghosts and things, and so that's obviously a concern of mine. Yes, I think it does to some extent teach you about yourself, but not in the sense of particular characters.
There's another sort of follow-up question, really, from Wolfpack Brother, who says something very similar. Did you put some of your personality traits into some or all of the characters when you wrote the series?
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost definitely some consciously, like Torak, who's likes to be on his own a lot and is great friends with Wolf, and Renn, who's very critical. And a perfectionist. Sometimes it's subconscious, I think. Aostra. I made up Aostra, and she's really scary. But she came from me. So, that's been concerning me a little bit. But there we go,
Well, it's cheaper than psychoanalysis.
Well, it is.
Eye of the Viper says, dear Michelle, why did you choose that time period and those adventures to write about?
Well, I wanted to write about the Stone Age. I wanted to set a story before history, because I didn't want, frankly, to be cluttered with all of the historical facts and things and tied down. I wanted to write a very simple story, a boy, wolf, bear, girl, forest. Those were the elements. So I thought, prehistory, great. I didn't want to send it very far in the past. I wanted it sort of in the hunter-gatherer time. And so I thought, well, 7,000 years ago, that's about the right time. So that's partly why.
Bolto also wants to know all about you and your psychology, and lots of people are interested in this. And she says, did you model any of the COAD characters on yourself?
Well, yeah, I think to some extent, Torak most of all, I think, because he's the main character, and he wants to be part of the clans, but he's not really. And many writers feel a little bit apart. They're observing society, but they're not part of it. For one reason or another. Renn is another aspect of me. I mean, I'd like to be as cool as Renn. I'd love to be, amazing at archery, but I'm not. She's just better at certain things. Torak, another aspect of him, it's partly wish fulfillment because he's got a great sense of direction and I've got none at all. So, partly you sort of develop what you'd like to be.
Yeah. Demon Hunter says, hi, Michelle. How did COAD present itself to you in your head when you first thought of it? And how does it present itself to you now?
Well, it didn't really present itself to me. It sort of came in bits and pieces. But it was, when it first came together, really was about sort of 2003. I was looking at an old manuscript I tried to write at university about a boy and a wolf. And it wasn't very good, but it had the story I wanted and a big bear in it, and the setting wasn't right. And I remembered suddenly how I'd felt when I'd confronted a bear in the forest in California, and that had made me feel as if I was back in the Stone Age, and that was when it all came together. And I think when it really came together was as a series was a few weeks later when I started planning the series. I realised that it wasn't just one story, and that only took a week. And that felt very strange. It was, a bit like discovering the series rather than making it up.
Draco Lupus says, in the series, I've always wondered how people get their names. Do their parents name them, or do they name themselves? And why the name? For example, someone might call their child Peter, which means rock. Why and who named Torak, Renn, Bale, and everyone else?
Well, it's their parents. It's a good question, and it's the sort of thing I'd love to have got in, but sometimes you don't want to slow the story down with those sort of details. It's either the mother or the father will name the child. In some clans, they don't name them for a while. In fact, this is mentioned in Ghost Hunter, and this isn't a spoiler, so I can mention it, that there is a clan in or the mountain clans. They don't name their children until they're about 7 summers, because in case they die, because life is hard in the mountains. So, interesting question.
Timril says, if you're still considering naming one of your future characters Timril, I am all
Good
the more
name.
honoured you still remembered it from my last question I made before. Now, I don't know if you've met Timril, because he or she seems to come from Sweden. Or maybe this was the last Clancast that we did about a year ago or so.
I do get requests for names to go in. It's a very good name. I'm afraid you won't be finding it in Ghost
No.
Hunter,
Oh, well.
because I have to sort of put all that on one side and then just, find the names that work for the characters.
Yeah. It's a good name, though.
Nice try.
In
a good name.
Sweden, Timril says it's discussed about our population of wildlife concerning the wolf number and the areas in which they live, and if it should be allowed to hunt them near to extinction. I'm saddened and loathe the politics for lacking swift action of putting such foolishness to an end. In your opinion, how important are wolves to you? Since I read Wolf Brother, I have loved and respect them more deeply.
Well, I'm glad of that. Yeah, they're very important to me, and I love the idea that there are still some wild wolves in Scandinavia. The difficulty is always when they come up against sheep, cattle, livestock, that sort of thing. They're not dangerous to people. However, I hope there's enough room in Scandinavia. You've got much more room, many more forests. You're very lucky. You've got something like 80% forest in Sweden, something like that. So I would hope there's some room for a few wild wolves.
Yeah. Now, Zinukthum says, is this the end of the Ancient Darkness Chronicles? Meaning, will there be any companion novels, possibly of wolf's cubs? Or what about other fantasy novels or series? What's next for you, Michelle?
Well, at the moment, I haven't got plans to stay in Torak's world. Much as I love it, it's so much linked with Torak and Renn and Wolf. I think it would be wrong of me to just try to spin out another story. Maybe in a few years I might return to it. I'm not ruling it out completely. So I have some ideas for stories which will be set in the past, but not this past.
Okay, so watch this space.
Yeah.
Nadoka says, what was your favourite place you went to while writing the series?
Well, there were quite a few, actually. Most places in the Arctic I loved. I mean, I really enjoyed Greenland. I always love going to Norway and Sweden and Finland. I just love going there, and I've been many, many times. And I went to Poland for Oathbreaker, and that was beautiful, going to Białowieża National Forest. So I haven't got a favourite.
Okay, well, non-committal answer there.
Yeah,
Let's see if we can push you a little bit further on this one from Ponigal, who says, who or what was your inspiration for Renn? Now, you've also you have told us previously, of course, that part of your inspiration for Wolf was your little sister. So is there something like that going on for Renn?
Well, Renn is a mixture, really. I mean, there's part of her is me, because she's sharp and critical and snaps at people, and that's what I do, I'm afraid. I'm not a particularly kindly person, but then Renn is a nicer person than I am, because she does have her kindly aspects. She just covers it up a bit more. I think she's partly just someone I'd like to be, because she's quite cool and quite tough, and she's very good at archery.
Yeah. MJ says, Michelle, I'm a huge fan. My question to you is, what do you enjoy most about writing the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness series? Thank you for your time.
What do I enjoy most? Yeah. I think, not all writing is fun. There are days when I don't enjoy it, and that's not to say I'm bored or anything. It's just hard work getting the words down in the right order. But what I do like, I mean, there's on occasion I will rent a little cottage in the countryside and just go down to this cottage, and nobody can contact me even on my mobile phone. There's no mobile phone reception, so there's no post, there's no newspapers, there's no telephone, and I'm just alone with the characters, and that is really, really fun. I had time like that when I was working out the Soul Eaters and giving them all their different characters, and that was brilliant.
Yeah. Swan Mage says, kind of following up on that too, actually, when you're alone with the characters. Swan Mage asks, do you ever have your head filled with ideas and not know which to use? If so, how do you decide what idea to use?
Yes, it does happen sometimes. Sometimes when I've done all the research for a particular book, and there's so much I want to get in because it's all so interesting about hunter-gatherers and things, and then I just have to take it bit by bit. I look at the story and I say, now what are the main events? What does Torak want, and what gets in his way? And then I try to get it down on one piece of paper, a sort of flow sheet. Just about 6 or 7 main points, and that gives me a structure.
And Swan Mage also wants to know, which book did you have the most fun writing?
Well, Ghost Hunter's been incredibly fun. I really enjoyed that for some reason. I loved writing Soul Eater. That was an easy one to write. It wasn't difficult to write. Spirit Walker was probably the most difficult to write because there was so much pressure after Wolf Brother. Difficult.
Forest Fred, I was wondering if you were planning to do a whole series when you first started Wolf Brother, or if you didn't know it would be a series until you'd finished the first book.
No, the answer is a bit more complicated than that. I started writing Wolf Brother thinking it was just going to be one book, and after I got about 6 chapters in, I thought, I'm having so much fun. I don't think it's going to end. Torak's story isn't going to end with Wolf Brother. So I just put down the pen and I spent about a week, it was very hot one summer, planning the other books, and it only took a week to get the whole sequence. And I had to have that, actually. Otherwise, all these little clues and things about Torak's knife and everything, they wouldn't make sense. You have to know how it's going to end in order to plant all these clues.
Ryan Gita says, now that Wolf has realised that Torak isn't a wolf, even though he has still allowed him to be a pack brother, will his attitude change towards Torak, as this thought will always be in the back of his head that he isn't really a wolf?
No, it doesn't really change, because the thing is, Wolf is growing up too, and he's learning about life and the world, and the main thing, the thing that runs right the way through these books like a sort of golden thread, is the love between Torak and Wolf, and that hasn't really changed.
Yeah. Loco Crazy Chick, or one word, says, when writing a new book or a new plot or even a new character, do you think about them and write ideas on the side, or do you just grab a pencil and let the words flow from the depths of your imagination? I know that you've done research, but I was just wondering if you have a side note of how you want a certain character, plot, name, etc. to be.
Yes, it's all quite messy to begin with, quite honest. When I'm starting a story, I'll have lots of little notes everywhere, some on research and background and history, some on the character, some on the plot, and it's all a complete mess because I don't like to put limits on myself at that stage. I just write stuff down and get ideas. And that goes on, actually, all the way through. I've had a box file full of tiny little notes for each of these books about characters and everything, and it's a continuous process. It doesn't stop. There's no point when it gets fossilised.
Wow. Katie B says, I got given the first Chronicles of Ancient Darkness book for my birthday a few years ago and was astounded. Every book you bring out never fails to amaze me.
Fantastic, thank you.
I can really empathise with the characters, and the attention to detail you give really brings the book to life. There's so many questions I want to ask. However, the one I would really like to know the answer to is, why do you think the historical setting you place the storyline in makes the book appealing to teenagers nowadays?
Well, that's an interesting one because, of course, I'm not a teenager now, but I was a teenager once a long time ago, and I was a pretty miserable teenager. I was not happy. I didn't like being a teenager. So, in a way, I'm writing these books for me as a child or a teenager, and I wanted to get away, and maybe that's the appeal for today's teenagers. It's a different world. There are no exams. There's none of that pressure. Different pressures. And the other thing I think that does appeal to me is that in hunter-gatherer society, you're given a knife at the age of 3. You're doing grown-up tasks by 7. You're treated as a grown-up. You're allowed to make your own decisions about your life, rightly or wrongly, as a teenager. So maybe that has the appeal that Torak and Renn are making pretty big decisions. Yeah. Without much reference to grown-ups. The odd bit of guidance from Fin-Kedinn, but maybe that's the appeal.
Yeah, interesting that. BMW Girl says, hi Michelle, when you were writing the series, did you get a lot of support during the process? And if not, how did you continue writing the book?
Did I get support? Yeah, I suppose I did, really. I don't want to sound too ungrateful. I got support in the sense of being allowed to be on my own. I'm a sort of writer who likes to be on my own. I just need to get down to work. My agent was brilliant at just sort of defending me against all comers. I don't have email, that's one of the reasons. So he sort of dealt with all of that side of things. My publisher just left me to get on with it. I knew that if I had a problem, I could always phone them up and talk to them about it. And that, I think, is the kind of the best support, if they just leave you on your own, but you know that you can go and ask them. And obviously my family helped as well, but in a sort of arm's length way, because I like to be on my own and just get on with the writing.
Yeah. Squeeblees, it's a good name, says, I apologise if the answer to this question is in the last book of the series, but is Wolf related to, or a cub of, one of the cubs that Torak was temporarily raised with as a baby?
That's a really nice question. I did have plans for that to be the case, and I was going to find some way of stating it, but it's just too complicated because wolves don't keep records of their genealogies and things like that. So I think the best thing to say is that that's a possibility. It's not ruled out.
Okay. All right, leaving that open-ended. Silver Lils says, which part of the series so far have you found the most enjoyable to write?
Well, I do like writing about cold. So I have really enjoyed Soul Eater, the ice and the snow. In Ghost Hunter, we're back in that kind of territory. So I have enjoyed writing that. Having said that, though, each of the locations has had their own appeal. I like the watery world of Outcast, and I loved the marine world of Spirit Walker and then the forest. But yeah, I like the cold.
Chinquinks wants to know about your titles again. This time, a slightly different question. When you decide on the titles for the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness, does the name just come to you based on what happens in the books? Do they have several meanings, some harder to find than others? I've heard before that the title Ghost Hunter may have several meanings. And do they come to you before you write the title, or do you only notice them afterwards?
Well, mostly, titles are funny things. Mostly they come before. Most of them came when I was planning the series. But a few of them didn't. I mean, Oathbreaker didn't. It was originally going to be called Earthshaker, but I knew pretty early on that was the wrong title. And I actually didn't have a title for Oathbreaker while I was writing it, which is a bit scary. But I eventually got it as I was going through the story. Yes, the titles do tend to have several different meanings. Yes, Ghost Hunter has several different meanings, none of which I'm going to go into now.
All right, didn't think you would, but it's worth trying. Wolfreader34 says, hey, well, I'm going to start off by asking you where your inspiration for the series of books came from. Even the first book, Wolf Brothers, seems extremely well thought out. Were you even inspired to write it, or did the pieces of the puzzle just come together in your head in the middle of a train journey or something? That's a reference to J.K. Rowling, of course.
Well, they came together in bits and pieces. I mean, the full story, I think, is told on my other website, michellepaver.com. But basically, it was sort of wish fulfillment. I'd wanted a wolf and I'd wanted the Stone Age as a child. I wrote a story about a boy and a wolf at university, and then I rediscovered that story just before writing Wolf Brother. I thought, oh, this is something. And then the setting came from an encounter with a bear I'd had in Southern California, which had made me feel as if I was back in the Stone Age. So I guess the light bulb above the head moment was the moment when I was looking at this old story I'd written. So yeah, it didn't really all come together at once. It took a few years, like all good stories.
Tinuvial, I hope I pronounced that properly, says,
That's
I write...
the Lord of the Rings, I think. Tinuvial.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. I think so,
okay.
yeah.
We've got a foreigner in our midst.
Yeah, no, nice, very nice.
I write a little myself, and several of the characters I have a lot of history, which is mentioned in my writing. Recently, I've been focusing on writing about the events in their pasts, aside from the main story. And I was just wondering if you do the same with Torak, Renn and their families, and maybe even the Soul Eaters. I'm assuming you plan out the events anyway, as they interlink with the Chronicles, but I was curious to see if you did this too.
Well, I do in the sense that for each of the characters, including the Soul Eaters and Fin-Kedinn, I have written a little sort of biography. That's only a few pages, but it's a sort of description of their lives. And I find it incredibly useful. If anyone is keen on writing, I mean, I would suggest they do that with their main characters, because it makes you concentrate on that person to the exclusion of all the others, and you just write their life. The Walker, for example, I did that. And that is incredibly useful, because then it means, apart from anything else, when I'm writing a particular book, I can look at those biographies and say, now, what have I told you about the Walker this time? Or what have I told you about Renn or Seshru? And it reminds me, everything about them. So yeah, very, very useful.
Catfish says, do you write and edit your work on paper or on a computer? I just wanted to know.
Well, like many writers, my first draft of all is longhand, just with a pen and paper. Most writers I know do that. You don't have to. And then very soon, well, in fact, the same day, I put it on computer. The reason for that is that I write very quickly and very badly in longhand, so I wouldn't be able to read it if I put it on computer. And then thereafter, it's always on computer, and I'm playing around with it on computer.
Right, now finally, we have 3 questions. Well, I'm afraid to say I think I know how you're going to answer them, but
Right.
I'm going to do my best, clan members. Really, I am going to do my best. So here we go. One from Killer Girl, one from Outcast Fanatic, and one from Artemis Moon. And Artemis Moon says, will Wolf play a very big part in Ghost Hunter or a small minor part? Killer Girl says...
Can I stop you there? Because I'm going to forget these questions if you...
Okay.
So I'll answer that one.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
He will play a big part.
I thought you were going to say wait and read the book.
No. I can actually tell you
He plays a
that.
very big part.
Wolf plays a very big part in Ghost Hunter.
Well, there you go, Clanners.
There you go.
So that's 1 out of 3. We've scored 1 there. Okay, 2 more. Killer Girl says, hi, your books are the best. I own all of them and I've read them like 1,000 times.
Excellent.
I even have one of the first published editions of Oathbreaker that's signed and comes with one of the leather wristbands. It's my lucky charm.
Wonderful.
I'd like to know if Renn and Torak end up together. That would be the best ending to the series.
Well, the short answer is I'm not going to tell you.
I knew you were going to say that.
But I'll give you. I'll just tell you one thing. I said I planned the series, and I did, and I had planned the ending. But something in relation to Renn has been a very strong character, and she's made me change my plans once or twice, and she has made me change my plans.
Gosh.
But not perhaps in a way that you would have guessed.
All right, well, hopefully that doesn't have any connection with the final question here, which is from Outcast Fanatic, who says, hi, Michelle, I love your books, and I was wondering if any characters die in the much-awaited Ghost Hunter.
Well, what can I tell you? I can tell you that somebody dies. And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, so Renn's made you change your plans, and somebody dies. You can't do this to us.
Sorry, but I'm going to. I'm sorry it's taking such a long time for Ghost Hunter to hit the shelves, but I really hope that you enjoy it when it comes. And I just want to thank everybody who sent in amazing, perceptive guesses and questions. They've really been of a really high quality, so I've actually enjoyed answering them tremendously.
That's fantastic. It's really good of you, Michelle. We've all enjoyed it hugely.